Let's get real. Welcome to TBC Today. This podcast features friends in and around the Triad Baptist Church community. Hear encouraging real-life stories from our weekly guests and inspiring insights from our host, Pastor Rob. To learn more about Triad Baptist Church in Kernersville, North Carolina, visit us online at tbcnow.org.
Welcome to TBC Today, our podcast here at Triad Baptist Church. And we're excited to be here with Pastor Rob, who's getting ready to have a conversation with Dr. Shannon Warden. Now, Dr. Shannon Warden is a wife, a mother, a daughter, a sister, a friend, and I added in here, I got that from your bio, but I added in here a servant because you do so much. She's a member of our church here, and she just does so much to serve, and so that's really exciting. In addition to that, of course, you're an author. We're going to talk about that a little bit today. And a speaker, and she is the director of counseling for our church here at Triad Baptist, which, if you would like to know more about that, check us out at tbcnow.org. You have your PhD in counseling from UNCG?
That's right.
Okay. And then you also attended Wake Forest University and Elon University. Tell us a little bit about that.
Love those schools. Anybody who's college hunting, those are great local schools. And I tell folks I just kind of drove up and down I-40, and it all worked out from Elon to Wake and back over to UNCG.
And you went there for counseling as well, or?
Yeah, so Elon was journalism, and Wake and UNCG were counseling.
Okay, awesome. Very good. Well, Pastor Rob, you ready to get real?
I am ready.
All right.
We'll put the sands of time, and we'll begin our session here today. Shannon, thanks for coming in today. We appreciate it so much.
All right. Good
Excited
to be here.
about you being a part. We want to tell us a little bit about your background. Okay, let's start with, I know your mom and dad from being members here at this church. Your dad passed away several years ago, and but through that, that's how I got to know you, and you were at another church at the time. But over time, tell us how you met your husband.
Okay, so Stephen and I met in youth group at Edgewood Baptist, right over here off 158, and we were like 14 years old. So we dated for 8.5 years, and which worked out because we were in different schools. I don't know that I would encourage that if you're with each other all the time, but we had a lot of space between us, so we dated 8.5 years, and we've been married a little over 23 years now. So from Edgewood to Calvary, we were always friends of Triad because of Mom and Daddy being here. And we actually got married here right before you started. I think it was right before, or it might have been the first year you were here, but we got married here because it was more central to our families, even though we were over at Calvary as members.
How about that?
Anyway, that's a little bit of background, but very local person, just over from Blues Creek, and my mom and dad, Ken and Sandra, they've been members since like 97.
So we already graduated from college at that time?
Yeah, so let's see. Right, well, I was just graduating when we got married for my master's program at Wake. And then we actually joined here in 2013. You don't want all those details probably, but a couple of job changes, relocation back here, and Triad was just the really best place to be. Good solid church, good school.
Yeah. And okay, and your children. You've got 3 children. Tell us a little bit about them.
Okay, all Titans, Triad Baptist Christian Academy Titans. Go Titans. Avery's a junior here. Carson's in 4th grade, and Presley is in 3rd grade. And they're doing great. We love it. Love Triad.
Good. Now, really, you ended up here at Triad because of the counseling program mainly.
Yeah.
And just whatever got you into that? Like you said, journalism was where you started out, right?
Yeah.
And what was the shift there? What happened inside of you?
Well, yourself. I mean, you're a writer, and are regularly, clearly doing speeches, and so I had a lot of that in me, and it was more of what I felt like I was supposed to do was go into writing, but I didn't really want to write on deadline like a journalist sometimes or often has to do. So in the senior year, when I was thinking about master's programs, counseling really just kind of rose up to the top, even though that was already in my heart. It became clear God was just, pointing me in that direction. And so I just hopped over to Wake and did that master's program there. And so fast forward, how I joined your staff was just, I had come back from Gardner-Webb, where I taught for a few years, had been at Wake for a year or so teaching, full-time on their faculty. And I said, Rob, what do you want to do? Are you doing something with your counseling ministry? And some things were transitioning, some people going out on mission or something. And you're like, yeah. And so that was 2015, believe it or not.
Yeah, it's amazing to me as I look back. Just I was overwhelmed. And so that's when you and I started conversations about hey, I'm going to stop counseling completely and let you take it over. And it was just perfect for us to come together. You said it was always in your heart, though. I mean, did you have
Counseling.
some experiences or something that happened that gave you the interest in that, or was it just a people helper? What was it in
Yeah.
your heart?
People, ministry, just naturally. You know, I was writing the teen newsletter at Edgewood already, the Youth Yak, Jeremy.
That's pretty good. I like
very
that.
original, no. But Youth Yak. And we were just, you know, I was already just kind of following my mom and my dad in their path. And Stephen and I were teaching children's choir, and we're not that musical trust, but somebody needed to do it, and we were like, we'll do it. And we were just already serving. And anyway, counseling, I think, was just already in me, just having grown up with family who were, you know, loved to serve. And my mom is a counselor type. You know, she was on the lay counseling ministry here for years. And so anyway, I think it's just the Lord saying, hey, come on, kid, this is what we're going to go do. It's like, all right,
Yeah.
then followed that path.
That's great. That's great. Well, I was just wondering if there's some traumatic experience, you know, because I knew
Oh,
your
no.
dad well, and I was thinking back over the years how much fun I had with him and getting him to go. First time he went on a plane with me to Phoenix, and
know it.
when I spoke out there, and he was just a lot of fun, and I miss him dearly, and I'm sure you do too. But just down to earth, he'd be the last person in mind I'd see as a counselor,
Yeah.
you know, and for you to go into that field, you know, he was just
Yeah.
down to earth, simple. He lived a simple life and just
Yeah.
simple statements and just wonderful.
You know, what I got from my dad, I think, just amongst many other things, but was his metaphors. I love metaphors, and Daddy would teach through a story all the time. So my mom was has always been more of the teacher and the, you know, maybe like Sunday school teacher type, but my dad was a deacon and just always on the side, mentoring and encouraging people. So they are just a really cool duo, and he passed back in 2017, and we miss him terribly, but we know he's doing well.
That's great. Okay, so one of the reasons we wanted to have you come is just, first of all, your love for counseling, but
Yeah.
also a lot of things have been going on in the last couple of years with COVID and some of the issues that's brought up for people. And have you been seeing a certain theme in your counseling related to that, or has it been just normal stuff?
Yeah, I mean, you know, anxiety and depression are always kind of the top two mental health issues that folks are battling. And so during this time, certainly more of both anxiety and depression. And also, interestingly, have heard recently from some of my peers that they're seeing clients talk more about just natural disasters and world politics. So COVID and whatever the Lord has been doing through that to just raise our awareness to the troubles in the world. I think just that whole pool of things, of events and circumstances, are more and more on people's minds. So I'm seeing a lot and hearing a lot more of anxiety in particular.
Okay, well, so anxiety's been higher than the depression side.
They're always pretty neck and neck, but I would say, yeah, generally anxiety a little bit
You know,
more.
I'd say as a pastor, mine have been more, I would say, money and sex in
Yeah,
marriage.
yeah.
Have been the two high ones for me, but then I would say you're right. This anxiety and depression probably more from the COVID side, and just, why do you think that is? Why are those the two that stick out in counseling for you?
So for any parents who happen to be listening, or just for lifelong sufferers of anxiety, how I frame anxiety, just it more specifically than depression, although I'll speak about both anxiety and depression. But to the parents who are listening, to the lifelong sufferers, I think the folks among us who see things more, this is just, you know, my experience, my insight around this, but when we do see the pain in the world, it's hard, and we're maybe more empathic, more aware. It's hard to not be somewhat anxious and overwhelmed, maybe even depressed by the realities around us. So, you know, and I tell folks, like, I don't like, of course, name names or whatever, but I can say of someone I told just recently, I said, you can't tell the story of joy unless you know the story of pain. So for anybody who's listening, and maybe you've tended to want to feel shame or feel that you're somehow abnormal, number one, you're not. There are millions of people worldwide who are struggling with anxiety and depression. And number two, I really do believe God is partnering with you to see the pain and not just drowned in the pain, you know, not feel like, oh my gosh, this is not good, I can't survive it. Yes, you can, and the Lord is opening our eyes so that we would be more sensitive and turn to Him more, and therefore be more hopeful. So I just don't think you get the joy of drawing close to God unless you have felt. And, you know, you teach this all the time. There's scripture that speaks to that. that we would be persecuted, or we would have to hurt or suffer, mourn with those who mourn. We would need to feel that before we could rejoice with those who rejoice, to really, truly rejoice. So anyway, I can go on.
That's
long,
good. Well, let's say a little more about that, because I think you're on to something there that is very important. You're saying enter the pain instead of just kind of replace it with getting busy. And I think a lot of women probably do that. They just stay so busy that they kind of push the pain down. But talk a little more about that, like entering your pain. Like, could you give an example or something that comes to your mind that you would share that says, hey, you got to honestly look at this instead of just trying to cover it up?
Yeah. Well, I'm just going to go to my dad's book here, him being a picture and a metaphor person. We just have limbed some large trees next to us, on some property next to us. We just have limbed those large trees. And when I look out the window, I can see where these weren't just little twigs that we pruned off. These were large limbs that needed to come down. And so when I look, I can see that the wood is still very raw, where we cut it just a couple of months ago. And I can still see the visible loss of those large limbs. So with depression and anxiety, we're constantly losing. We're losing the sense of control we think we have. We're losing time. We're losing money. We're losing relationship. We're losing respect for people who let us down. Perhaps we've let somebody down, and so therefore we feel lost, that they may see us differently. And those are all pruned limbs from our life. Those are, another way of saying it is our eyes are now open to what we don't have and what we're not. So again, I see those trees and I think those needed to be cut back, right? This is straight Bible right here in terms of pruning and what God does to us throughout our lives to prune, and we see the visible evidence of that. Okay, come back to depression and anxiety. We want to pretend like those things never happened. Those traumas, those losses, those disappointments never happened, but they did and they do, and we're still bearing the visible. Even the invisible. That's the thing about mental health, mental wellness, is we just feel like if you're smiling, everything's good. But what we know, and you know this too, is just the hurts are inside. The visible pruning in there, where I can look out my window and see those trees pruned back, in here is where our anxiety and depression is. And so, like you say, of women, I would say of men too. Men sometimes are dealing with depression and they're angry. They are so angry at the world. Their wife says, "Why are you so angry? Will you please go talk to somebody? Go talk to Pastor Rob." And maybe the men will. Men, please go talk to Pastor Rob.
How important is it to communicate and to talk and to express yourself? I sort of grew up at a time and a place and even a church where you kind of weren't supposed to let anybody see you sweat, or you weren't supposed to talk about your pain or problems. And now, being older and being where I am now, I know how important it is to express that, communicate that, let somebody in on that. How important is that?
It's the difference in living and dying. You could have gone on with this need right here. Instead, you went and did the work to hopefully give you a chance at a better quality of functioning or something. And it's the same.
We're talking about my shoulder surgery. If you're listening, I recently had shoulder surgery, which needed to be repaired. But that's a great analogy, too, so continue.
Yeah, right. So I'm looking at you in this cast, and I'm thinking of us with those hidden scars, that hidden pruning, that you need not talk very long at all with somebody to hear the pruning that's going on. I don't like it. I mean, this DNA was made for heaven. And the world and sin got in the way. We have to do this life of wandering until we get to the promised land. Yeah. But internally, be it those trees, be it the hidden anxiety and depression, be it more visible physical changes, surgeries, procedures that we have, whatever that is, it's still a trauma that came from a need. Those trees, they needed to be cut back. Those limbs could fall and kill somebody. They were that big. They needed to come down. The anxiety and the depression is purposeful too. We don't like it. This has not got to be fun. I'm looking at motioning into Jeremy's arm here. This cannot be comfortable or fun, and yet you're bearing it because you have the promise, the hope of what's to come. And that's what I say to folks who are struggling with anxiety and depression. Do talk to people. Even though it may feel unnatural, you were maybe told, no, don't do that. This is not real. This isn't really a problem. No, do talk to people. Do listen to podcasts. Do get the books. Do get into the Word. Do come to church. Get the counseling that Rob is doing every Sunday in the pulpit. That is preaching counseling that you're giving from the pulpit. So I tell people, come to church for not only the normal reasons of just be here, but come and find that healing, get that healing. So yes, I love that point. Do talk, do share, stop covering it up, And I guess another important thing there too is, would you just be honest with yourself? I think often people are like, hey, I'll get those limbs another year. Well, the limb comes down and it busts a hole in your roof, and you're like, oh shoot, I should have gotten that limb earlier. Or this arm, you face worse damage later on because you didn't take the proactive steps. Same with the counseling. Take proactive steps. Get really the abundance out of this life that God has offered for us. Why would you let anxiety and depression hold you up? Go ahead and recognize it's happening. It's purposeful. There's help for it, and don't drown in that. Yeah.
That's good.
I like it. Okay, let's make it a little more real. Okay, tell us about one of the hardest times in your life.
Okay. And you'd asked me earlier, did I come from some traumatic background? No, not necessarily. I mean, we all are living lives, so I didn't come from, some major trauma as a kid. But I would say just at this point, midlife, some of the handful of challenges that we have had as a couple of our place in marriage, just the challenges of raising 3 kids, the challenge of even getting pregnant with 3 kids. It was difficult to get pregnant with Avery. Had a miscarriage before him. It was difficult getting pregnant with Carson. Had a miscarriage in between them. Had trouble getting pregnant. I remember he and I were coming back from some fertility treatments, and I was like, you know what? I feel like God is telling me right now, Shannon, you can do all these things if you want, but I'm going to give you a baby when I want to give you a baby, if I want to give you a baby. Well, this is such a cool story. I mean, I remember exactly where we were on I-40, driving back from the doctor's office in Winston. And I'm saying this to Stephen. 2 weeks later, I had a positive pregnancy test. And that, that can be from shots or whatever. We were trying to make the decision at that point, do we need to go with IVF? And so we had just done some shots, and we just decided we're not going to go to that next level. And so there we were pregnant. So the third baby, by the way, Presley, I was like, God, could I have another one before I'm 40? And we had her at 39, no problems at all. No treatments, no, all the work, pregnant parents, people are trying to get pregnant, it's like crazy trying to get pregnant sometimes. That's another thing. For you folks who got pregnant, like in this really clocked way, congratulations. That doesn't work for everybody. Just want to give a shout out to all the parents who are having trouble getting pregnant. But that was a really, of many, of many wonderful trials that the Lord has given us and brought us up through, raised us up through. I would say having children, parenting children, hard and wonderful, and just career. I mean, I'm a career person. I wasn't necessarily called to stay at home or homeschool or that kind of thing, but God has given us a way to be able to be with our kids all the time. I'm with my children very often. I'm home. I work from home. I actually teach full-time for Liberty University, and which has been a wonderful story in and of itself, just how God has brought my career along from counseling for years at Calvary Baptist Church, and then finishing my PhD, teaching down at Gardner-Webb, teaching at Wake Forest, now at Liberty, and just, it's good. So I know those are not like the, oh, woe is me kinds of things, but I want people to hear, there are some woe is me types of things, but there's also just a whole lot of real stuff that's happening every day. And the good news for me, thank God, thank you for my mom and dad who showed me early. So parents, anybody who's listening to this, grandparents, take your kids by the hand, bring them to church, talk about Jesus, talk about real things about you and Jesus. They need to see that he is real, that he is alive. He makes all the difference. To young people right now, like teens, young 20s, just stop messing up. If you're messing up, stop it. Get your life on a good track and hang on to Jesus. That's what it's about.
That's good. So if you go back to that time where you weren't getting pregnant, did you had to wrestle with, what if I never have children biologically?
Yeah.
What did that do to you? I mean, was that like up and down? Were you on a roller coaster?
Yeah, well, it was definitely a roller coaster. It was all the books, and it was like, what in the world is happening? And all those hard feelings of, whoa, it's not supposed to happen this way. We knew of people, in life who clearly did not appear to be parent material, and yet they were having babies. So before you go judging me, sounding like I'm judging, I'm not saying, what parents should look like, but I'm just saying these folks, I'm talking about, folks who are really doing some things that would actually prevent a baby. Drugs and et cetera, and they're having babies. Thank you, Lord, that you made that possible. But for us, we were looking around like, what's wrong? Why can't we have a baby? And it was just all the things. It was all the things. But ultimately, it was God saying, hey, watch this. It's not going to be like you thought or when you thought, but if you'll just hang on to me, it's going to be good. And so, yeah, we had all the questions, had to do a lot of research, figure out some stuff, but, ultimately it's a great story so that I can even tell it today. That ends up, I write about that, I talk about that to groups.
Yeah, what did you write about that?
Yeah.
Tell us those books.
Yeah, so, another really cool part of my story is just, working at Calvary for years. I'm good friends with Dr. Gary Chapman and like the 5 Love Languages, Gary Chapman, which is amazing. And so this was the first book we did together, things I wish I had known before we became parents. And so we did that in 2016, and then we did this other one together, the DIY Guide to Building a Family That Lasts. This was 2019, and I need to get busy working on other books, but I've been so busy raising babies and teaching counseling students. But yeah, so I tell that story in here, and just this is just us. A lot of times sharing stories of just real life, and throwing in some hopefully helpful wisdom too about here's some thoughts, here's some ideas for how you can maybe do your home life a little bit better.
Yeah, next time you write a book, I want it not to be Gary Chapman, but Shannon and Rob Decker.
Yeah. I know.
Where can you get the book if someone wanted to purchase a
Sweet.
book?
Right, so you can get these on Amazon. You can get them through Moody Publishing. You can get them Christian book distributors, but pretty much any of the bookstores out there. I have a website, and I don't even have time. I need help. I don't even have time to really keep up my website properly, so I don't have a sales feature on my website, but you can find it on Amazon. And I brought this other book too, just cause this is not even, I like to say, this one's not even for sale, but this one is so special to my heart. This book, I did this one in 2004. This is the history book for Calvary Baptist Church in Winston-Salem, and just what a sweet time. And so just a sweet, sweet time. I was on staff there in the counseling center, and brought on by Dr. Mark Quartz, Dr. Gary Chapman, and just to have been shepherded by those wonderful men of God. Just so grateful.
That's a pretty cool opportunity to get to be a part of
Yeah.
80th anniversary like that.
Yeah, all of that is so good, so good.
You and your family are pretty creative. So what are some
Sometimes.
fun things that you guys do as a family to help relieve stress or anxiety, or, things to do when you're quarantined or your, life is shut down temporarily? What are
Yeah.
some fun things y'all do?
We go to Dollywood, like Jeremy Chandler.
Yeah, that's true. We're big Dollywood fans.
I love
buddies,
Dolly.
Yeah.
I know, I love Dollywood. But we dance in the kitchen. We we color. We get outside, and got that also from my dad and my mom. Just love to be outside. Love to smell dirt. Love to hear machines pushing dirt. We just bought our first tractor, which I'm like geeking out over. It's so cool. Just to have a
You
tractor.
drive it and everything,
I have not, because we just got it, but I can.
but you can move
Yeah.
dirt and all that.
She plans to.
I can ask my brother to move dirt. Both of my brothers, for that matter,
They're
they're
crazy
awesome.
about it,
But
yeah.
but I just love that. So anyway, we get outside, and we hack weeds, and we pick up trash, and we just get outside and play.
That's
awesome.
cool.
That's great.
Well, I was thinking about the coping, the ideas to help with,
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
everything that's gone on. What are some suggestions you might have for coping in practical ways with COVID or anything else people are dealing with?
Yeah, breathe, people, breathe. That's a number one. If you'll just slow down, breathe. That is such a simple coping strategy, but I think sometimes we're just so literally hurrying, but also emotionally hurrying. If we would just make more time to sit and to think, to pray, to meditate, to be in Scripture, but time, walking, but all of those require time and breathing. So honestly, the easiest one out of the gate is make more time to breathe, make more time to walk, to be active, to be with people you care about. That's the top of the list. The next thing I would say is, stop putting everybody else down. What did she just say? Yeah, I got my opportunity on PR's podcast. I've got to get this right. But it's just, we're so critical of our spouse, and we're so critical of our children. We're so critical of ourselves. We're so critical of the guy who just cut us off in traffic. And that guy might be having a panic attack. I don't know. He could be angry at somebody who just cut him off. And so what I'm trying to do, I'm not perfect at it, but what I'm trying to do is to catch myself being critical, especially of the people that I love the most. So in 23 years of marriage, let me say to the young married woman, hey, he's got potential, okay? Stay with him, keep working on him. And man, step up. Listen to the men, listen to the Bible, listen to God speaking to you about how to step up as a lover of your wife, as a leader of your home, as a partner in that life that you and she are doing together. So I want to equal opportunity speak to both the man and the woman there. But instead of putting each other down, would you just start noticing what's going right and actually say that? Hey, thank you. Thanks for emptying the dishwasher. Hey, I really appreciate what you just said to me. Hey, let me give you a hug, because he likes hugs, so hug him. These are such little things, but sometimes we get ourselves in such deep holes of resentment towards each other. I'm just like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
This is not going to help your
good.
anger, your depression, your anxiety. So breathing, walking, that sort of active stuff, and then on the emotional, relational end, step back, start to notice what's right in our home and in this relationship, and start there, praising that, being grateful for that, and then get help. If you're really in a deep hole and you've got some communication problems, anger issues with each other, reach out. Our counseling ministry is small, but we do stay pretty busy. We've got a few volunteers. Youth PR still does. He's not advertising it, but he's here, and he counsels. We just did, but not really. Edit that out, boys. But come to church, listen to the word, get involved with some groups here, and let that all change you.
I even think sometimes, like when you're talking about that, it's very hard for me if I come home, for example, or I have a thought that hits me, and it's my wife, I just feel much freer to just say it, even if it's critical. Yeah. And so I have found that sometimes if I could just hold on and just not say anything at that point, give myself a little time, I'm always glad I didn't say it. Mm-hmm. And then every time I say it, I always feel bad about myself saying, now I hope my wife never listens to this broadcast, but just that sense of being wiser about that, because the people you are closest to, sometimes you hurt the most. And so to just step back and realize that, man, I do have issues, and I want to just get them out on the table and get this fixed. And sometimes it's better to just not say anything.
You both have talked about parents and couples. What about singles and teenagers dealing with all the white noise out there? Mm-hmm. Temptation, stress, anxiety, the cyber world, and addictions to telephones, and addictions to, we don't call them telephones, cell phones, addictions to all of that stuff. What kind of advice do you give to a younger crew, or even a single crew who doesn't have a wife to go home to and express these things?
Yeah. I'm midlife, so I've got good wisdom. I hope to have double this wisdom if I make it into my 80s, But what it seems to be true, what I've learned and am learning, is the people that are right around you, whoever they may be, that's the greatest prize. And this life, it's a great prize. I've spent a lot of hours and days and weeks across my life grieving and moaning and groaning about all the things that were wrong. And the older I get, and I think I've learned and seen this wisdom in people who are ahead of me, is stop mourning about the things that are wrong and start celebrating and start investing in the things that are right and good. And I would say the same to the young people. Young people, if you are with friends who are bad influences, you need to make some space. I see, I'm not even your mom, and I'm going to tell you that, right? She was right. You need to get better friends. If you, by the way, I'm going 8 lifespan, y'all, hold on. If you are somebody who's a bad friend right now, and you're making bad choices and you're influencing some people.
Look at the camera for that one.
Let me look at you. If you're a bad influence, if you're somebody who is influencing and it's not good, right? And you're just doing it because hey, this I don't even know why I'm doing it. It's probably the answer. But if you just catch yourself doing and influencing in negative ways, stop it. You are ruining lives around you. So I would say this to all the white noise and everything. Try to get your head out of the white noise. Try to get your head out of that stuff and get your head into Jesus. Now, I've got a lot of friends who are not into Jesus. They're like, Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. Keeps me singing where okay. Okay, sorry. So say you're somebody who doesn't even know how you feel about Jesus. I would say to you, give him a chance. Just spend the same amount of time, or even let me back that up, a quarter amount of time that you're putting into all the other stuff you're doing, studying who this Jesus is. Changes lives. That is truth. That's proven. It's true. I'm one more person telling you. So if you're a friend of friends who are bad influence, get some new friends. There are other friends out there. If you're a person who's influencing negatively, please stop, and please consider other alternatives, such as letting God grow you into that beautiful human being that he's trying to grow you into. Go on up the ladder here a little bit. Jeremy, you're talking about single folks. In a similar way, in terms of life and the wisdom that God is always just consistently bringing to us, look at that beautiful life around you, and instead of mourning what you don't have, right? While it is mournful, I have sat with many people who are sad about not having a companion or a spouse, or not having children. Maybe they've got a spouse and they don't have children, or maybe they don't have a spouse and they don't have children. Whatever the case, that is mournful, and yet we have to, whatever our grief and our loss is, our disappointments are, we have to make a conscious choice. How can I live this abundant life? How can I find out what this is about and then get out there and get serving? That is old wisdom. That's not Shannon wisdom. That's just old wisdom that has been passed down in the ages, and I'm glad to have received that. And right now I'm just trying to do the same thing. I want good people around me. I want people who are positive and who are loving. I want to be kind to people who are not so loving, in hopes that they will become more loving. I want to, take advantage and really invest in what can be an abundant life. So be that single, be that, in a couple, in a family, whatever the case, a biological family, an adopted family, whatever the case, just abundance, y'all. Life is short. We've seen it all the time. That's another thing that's coming out of COVID. God's just really opening our eyes even more to how vulnerable we are, limited in our health. So let's just take all the good wisdom we can and try to live life abundant.
And I will say this, because we're out of time, and I'll let you take it over from here, but I have seen Shannon live this out. I've watched you live it out in your groups. I've watched you live it out when we've talked one-on-one, just the frustrations of hearing frustration or negativity and not moving into it saying, stop being negative, but just really trying to draw out the positive and say, hey, we got to come to a solution. What can we do? And I've just watched you do that, and I've sensed that in your spirit. And I think that's why people are drawn to you. I don't know if you got any enemies, but it's just amazing to me to watch how you deal with people, and you make people feel valued and you make them feel important. And I think it's just a real respect I have for you as I've watched that over the years.
Thank you,
so it's
Pastor
great.
Rob.
Thank you for coming today.
This was fun. Thank y'all.
Yeah,
the
good.
sands of time are out.
I know,
Yes,
I
we're
know,
out of
and I was
time.
just thinking with what Pastor Rob said, you are just a beacon of light.
Thank you.
And that's a goal, that I have, and I know probably most of us have, is to shine the light of Christ more. And so this has been very encouraging, very exciting. Tell us what your website is, your personal website.
Simple. It's ShannonWarden.com.
ShannonWarden.com.
It's tough. I don't know if you remember that.
And,
What's her name?
yeah, of course, you can check out tbcnow.org and learn more about our counseling ministry, as well as she mentioned her kids who are awesome. Her son Avery's in a lot of our plays. Is very creative, very good leader in our school. But if you'd like to know more about our academy, Triad Baptist Christian Academy, check us out at tbcanow.org. And it's been a great conversation. And so if you liked this podcast, share it with a friend. Like it, comment, let us know what you think. Have a great week.
Thanks for joining us this week on TBC Today. We want to connect with you, so make sure to visit our website, tbcnow.org, and subscribe, rate, and review the show in iTunes, Spotify, or Amazon Music. Don't forget to share this episode with a friend, and be on the lookout for our next conversation.